Well, Tina's slightly less subject to the wit than I am, so she gets a bit of a pass. So I love forums like this. I think ideas are the lifeblood of democracy, and I'm really glad to be part of this, even as an elected MP. I've already seen 3 journalists that I know, so I'm just going to tell you right now, I am not speaking on behalf of the Labour government or the Labour Party. I am an MP. If you really want to twist something that I say and put it in an article, go ahead, but please send it to me first. I would be grateful. I also care very much about the question on the table. In a sense, everything I've done in my life, the 5 years I spent working in the tech sector, writing a book, standing for Parliament myself, trying to reform a think tank in this country that is avowedly and openly political rather than pretending not to be. All of these are, in a sense, about democracy. It's the thing that I care most about. So I want to try and put out an argument to be knocked down rather than give you a kind of history of how we got here. And the argument is this, that this country's democracy is in better health than many of our peers, but this country's state is a miserable, tangled, ineffective mess. And when the state is a miserable, tangled, ineffective mess, it has all sorts of downstream consequences for how democracy works, in particular, that the connection between frustration, voting, replacing the people in power, and seeing change doesn't work. And that connection in this country is not working properly. So what do we need to do to fix democracy? Radically reform the connection between the state and democratic institutions. That's essentially what I'm going to say. So let me just be a little bit more precise about what I mean. Democracy in this, and we don't have to argue about the words, but just so I'm clear about the point I'm making. Democracy, in what I'm saying, is elections. It's the institutions of democracy, it's Parliament. It's, to some extent, the faith that people have, not that democracy will deliver for them, but that they'd rather have democracy than some other form of political system. And that there are worrying trends there, but the vast majority of the British public still believe they'd rather have democracy as opposed to anything else. The state, on the other hand, the point of a state is to give effect in a democracy to the people who have a mandate to effect the change that they promise. That's the point of a state. Why do we all do our jobs in politics? I want to win power. I want to be in the cabinet so that I can control an institution that allows me to effect change in the society. That's the basic structure of how it works. When that institution is broken and it doesn't allow you to do half the things you want to do, it incentivizes risk aversion. It incentivizes avoiding hard choices. It incentivizes short time horizons. And the effect of all of those things is a public that quite rightly, slowly, bit by bit, but surely gets more and more pissed off. Not in one big blow, not in one big sort of dramatic moment, but bit by bit, they begin to think, every time I go to the ballot box and then I change who's in power or I vote on a constitutional question, nothing changes. And that is a deep and serious problem that we must fix. So let me just quickly tell you why I think democracy's here not as bad as it is in some places. Unlike some of my colleagues, I thought Brexit was a constitutional question. It always was. And once the British public had voted, we had to deliver it. That was the bottom line. So I think it is a good thing for democracy that Brexit has happened, and we should not forget that. The last election was a celebration of the median voter. My wife's American. We talk about the differences between our system a lot. You can knock the disparity between the number of seats that Labour got in Parliament and the vote share it got. But what it really means is that political parties in this country are incentivized to ruthlessly focus on the median voter. When those voters decide elections, democracy tends to work better. And the flip side of the same idea is, can you imagine in Congress if the House of Representatives ever had a situation in which the number of seats that just changed hands? Impossible, because they're gerrymandered. And in parliaments all over the world, the number of seats that have just changed hands in the House of Commons is an extraordinary thing, and it is good for democracy. It is about refreshing politicians. It is about energy, lifeblood, injecting it into the core of our parliament, and it is what voters wanted. So that is good too. We are not also socially polarized like some countries are. When we import this language from America of the culture wars, that's not a representation of the vast majority of the British public. When you map, as Luke often does, public opinion across a whole range of moral questions, actually the public are not cemented into 2 immovable blocks at all. Again, that is a good thing for democracy. However, the bad. And my contention is that all of these bad things are actually at base about the connection between the political institutions of democracy, who has power when they win elections, and the state, what they can actually do with that power, what that power means for citizens. Trust is never lower. People don't think voting makes any difference. They don't think national politics makes any difference to their lives. When I hit the campaign ground in Wigan, one of the things I was struck by is voters not showing out. It's not to do with apathy. It's not because they can't be asked. They've got better things to do. They're angry. They're really angry. They don't think their time is well spent in that ballot box because they don't think it makes any difference. That's a problem. Low turnout is generally often about anger rather than apathy. And now, having been elected, every institution I find in the British state, in some ways, has an unthinking, latent institutional conservatism built into it. And I have no problem with being conservative. I do have a problem when you don't know why. If you think things should be done the same way, and you can't explain why. And everywhere you look, in Parliament, in the House of Commons, in Whitehall, these institutions will not change, but they don't know why. And that's a problem because voters want change, as Tina said. One minor example of this is, why can't we get 650 MPs outside the House of Commons so they can fix the damn building and then go back in 6 years? Why can't we do that? It's so simple, and yet we can't. We cannot make it happen. So here's my contention. Most of these problems are about the weakness and the ineffectiveness of the British state, not about the political institutions and norms that make democracy work. If we get the state working properly, we will fix problems that are often laid at the feet of British democracy. So here's a mad list to end, because I know I've got about a minute and a half. 1 minute, not even a half. Here's a mad list of reforms, of things that we could do. I'm just going to say these and put them out here without any explanation whatsoever. We need fewer site halls in Whitehall. We need way more expertise and way fewer generalists in Whitehall. We need a beefed up centre of the British state, which separates politics and the civil service much more cleanly and empowers those with mandates. Politics has to drive what the civil service does. We need more centralised procurement skills, better use of data. We obviously need to reform judicial review, and I say that as a Labour MP. We need to value public institutions again and build them, an FDR era in which we value the authority and power of a public institution that the public recognise and see themselves in. But we also need to recognise that parliamentary sovereignty is a myth. The people are sovereign. And that has all kinds of implications for our constitution that we need to cash out right the way through them. Sovereignty in practice flows up in this country. That's what we saw with the Scottish referendum, not down. And we should be reforming the British state to reflect that. Local authorities don't work when the elected mandates that people have do not match the powers that councillors actually have to effect the change. There's no connection between what you vote for and what change you want to see. So it's no wonder that about 30% of people only show out. And anybody that is truly devolved has to be able to default. Unless you can borrow money and default, devolution isn't real. So I will stop there. If we did a few of those things, I think you would repair that connection between democracy and the state, and that would do some of the big things that we need to fix democracy.
Thanks, Jeff.